Welcome to this episode of Battlefield Nevada. Today we have landslide Manfredi, who just won his election for the Republican primary for public administrator by 4 votes. And they're actually going to have a re-vote because there's actually allegedly some 43 people who double voted. Anyway, so talk about that. So welcome to the show. Let's go right into this. What happened with the election? Why are they having a re-vote?
So I received a phone call a week after the results had been in, and I was told that in order to make it official, it has to be officiated. And so I got a phone call from the election department and said that was they were unable to do that because as many as 43 people might have double voted twice.
Okay, voting twice is a felony in the state of Nevada.
Correct.
Are they bringing the charges? Do they have names of people? Is there an investigation? Is the DA investigating? Are there criminal investigations going on? What's going on with this?
When I went to the Clark County commissioners, I had those same type of questions. Unfortunately, they weren't answered. So, I don't know if it was too early or they're still investigating it, but as of right now, those are the million-dollar questions that nobody seems to know. There has been some information that has come out, but it's not enough to really get us the answers that we want.
Are you going to take legal action to stop the election? Are you going to move forward?
We're gonna move forward with it. Yeah, we had all those people who voted for us. We're going to get more voters. Like I said, we won the election, so we're going to keep going forward with it. I might not agree with it, but at this point, the commissioners feel they just want to get this going, so I can prepare for the general election in November, and so that's what we're going to do.
But the re-vote is going on right now. They're sending out mail-out ballots, and so there's no polling. It's all in the mail. That's a whole nother election for you. That's a whole nother campaign. How's that working out?
Well, it's been a little difficult, and I spoke about this during the commissioners' meeting. One of them had said that we have to dig deep in our pockets and basically redo this all over again.
It's going to cost about $145,000 a year.
Right, 130,000. The number keeps changing, so we'll see what the final number is. But yeah, it's up there.
So how's it work? There was 56,000 people who voted in your election with you and Thomas Fergery. Is it just those 56,000 people that get ballots, or is it everyone who is eligible to vote in the county? What's the rules?
So from what I've been told is everybody who voted in the primary Republican are the same ones that are getting the mail-in ballots.
Okay. And so what's the process, and when are the mail-in ballots due? When are we going to know the results?
So the mail ballots, from what I've been told, have all been mailed out, and they are due by 7 p.m. on July 17th. So you can either drop them off. There's a list of locations that the county has put on the website, or you can put it in the mail with the self-addressed envelope that was included in the ballot.
So what are you doing to get people to know about this? Because again, it's just you and your Republican opponent. How are you getting the vote out? What are you doing?
So, when this came out, a lot of people contacted me asking me, hey, what can we do to, basically win this again? So I got reconnected with my donors, got reconnected with my voters, continue to go to events. And, that's basically what it is. It's an extension of what we already did, basically. But after everybody voted for us and they understood the circumstances, again, a lot of people that voted for me probably don't know about it because, there's only so much time to get it out there. So phone calls, emails, texts, we're using online social media, and the support is pretty good. Let's
go into the elephant in the room and talk about the slimy campaign against you. It's been you've been slimed by the Review Journal, you've been slimed by your opponents. How do you feel about that? And how do you feel about that, first of all?
Well, I accepted the fact that when you're going to run for office, these are all the things that come with it. And if you don't, then you shouldn't run for office, yeah. There's a lot of things that have been said that are not true. And we won this thing based on the fact that people know the facts. Again, 29,000, I believe 518 people voted for us. And they voted for us because, again, they know the facts. I've been in town 20 years. I've talked to numerous people in reference to this, including firefighters and cop friends, judges, nonprofit executive directors. I've really taken the time to explain this in detail. I've taken phone calls, texts, emails. I've gone to organizations and groups, get-togethers, I should say, who are Some people had randomly asked questions, and I'm glad they asked those questions because part of this process is being transparent.
What are some of the questions you're getting asked?
In reference to the Review Journal article, it's basically saying, hey, this is, and what people need to understand.
What's your response to them?
What people need to understand is that the Review Journal, just like any other type of news outlet, is for entertainment purposes, right? So if they wrote an article that was based really more on the facts of what is currently the situation, then it wouldn't be as interesting. So I accepted the fact that when I was interviewed by Michael Davidson on the RJ, he gave me the opportunity to respond, and I did. When the article came out, there were some things in there that were I found out for the first time and that were a little shocked, but I accepted the fact that, again, this is for entertainment purposes. And so we're going to keep moving forward, and little by little, after the primary election, I will be making a public statement, including a media release in reference to that.
Okay. So we're not going to get into all the details because people can read about that on their own.
Right.
But it's important for people to at least hear in your own words, what happened in the jail and what happened following that. Just generically, just as a brief, just tell people exactly in your own words.
Right. Well, again, when I make that media release and that after the primary, and we're actually going to be doing an interview, all those things will be involved in that. So as soon as we get done with that. Your opponent's
hitting you on this.
Right.
They're out there conducting a whisper campaign against you, claiming that all kinds of horrible things about a girl in the jail that was 16 that you allegedly slept with, that accused you of voluntary sexual intercourse. You were charged with that. You pled no contest to disorderly conduct. No felony charges.
No felony charges, no gross misdemeanors.
It was a gross misdemeanor, wasn't it, the conviction?
That was my final conviction is a disorderly conduct.
But it was a gross misdemeanor, is that correct?
The gross was part of the plea process.
But it took 5 years to get to that point. Why did it take 5 years?
Because this is typical in the court system. Yeah, I know of people that are going on their 7th and 8th year. I mean, these things are very complex when you're dealing with a lot of details. The details have changed, and every time they change, which is 6 to 8 times on record, so every time it changes, a new investigation happens. We were ready for trial a long time ago. But again, whenever the defense finds, or I should say the other side finds that there's some holes in the story, well, then we have to start the process all over again. And that's exactly what has happened.
In the record that we saw, it's online, it's public record,
right.
You were scheduled to go on trial in 2013 and you continued that. So was there a reason why you continued that, just because your lawyer wasn't ready, or what was your thinking?
Well, again, the dates kept going back and forth. So every time a new date would come up, right, we prepared for a certain date. So there were times where both sides, and this is typical stuff that happens within the courthouse and all those involved in the legal stuff. So there were some times where we were waiting for expert witnesses, more information to come through. There were times where they were waiting for it. So it's a back and forth game of, at the end, when are we ever going to be ready? And so we weren't ready. Nobody was ready at the time.
So let me ask you a fundamental question. That is this: should male COs be basically watching over female prisoners? Do you think there's a problem with that, flawed problem with that?
I absolutely do. And I was very fortunate that when I worked in my unit, I had 8 female probation officers who half of them are mothers, and they're still my close friends. They all made their statements in reference to the case, and again, they're still my friends. I'm going to their birthday parties, and they're still part of my active life. So the biggest thing is that it's an environment where the women are in the men's units. They seem to handle themselves well. They don't, the men don't really cross the line. It's a different walk of life. They always have a male partner that's close to them.
So if you're in a jail or prison and you're a male CO, are you ever alone with a female? Or do you have another partner with you? I mean, how does that work? So people understand
I can't speak for the adult side because I don't know anything about the adult side. In reference to the juvenile detention center where I worked, a female officer was always with you. there was no other places to go that you weren't being watched. You know what I mean? So anytime you entered a room and needed a key, there's always a female next to you. Anytime you entered in any other type of room, a female PO was with you. Those are all things they were interviewed. Those are all statements that were made.
Sure.
And so I was very.
So were you ever alone with her?
Absolutely not.
No.
Never.
And so, was there any evidence, physical evidence at all that she had?
None at all.
She had no physical evidence?
None at all.
There's no video evidence?
There's no video, no.
So why'd they bring the charges? I don't understand
That's a great question. And I think what happens is that whenever there's what I call an impulsive arrest, collaborating statements where they feel enough to bring charges on somebody, and I understand that the liability part of it is that at what point do we, stop pursuing it, or what point do the DA stop playing judge and the judges rely on a jury trial, because there's those in-betweens, and I understand that part of the process. So why did it go as far as it went? That's a great question. It shouldn't have.
So we're going to stop here. We're going to take a break for 2 minutes, and we'll be back after these messages with Battlefield, Nevada.
Newsflash, local attorney Paul Patter wins a $160 million verdict against a strip casino.
Paul Patter got me a $160 million verdict.
In a wreck, need a check? Don't settle for pennies on the dollar. At Paul Patter Law, we know how to win. We recently received one of the largest verdicts in Nevada history, $160 million. As I always say, don't get mad, get legal.
Paul Patter got me a $160 million verdict.
Welcome back to this episode of Battlefield, Nevada. We're here with Aaron Manfredi, who's running for public administrator. Sounds to me from what you're saying, there's no physical evidence, there's no video evidence. I think you mentioned that the videos are every 48 hours, they're cleaned up and they start over. Mm-hmm. So there's no recording of it. But what I found interesting was that she accused you of voluntary sexual misconduct, not rape, but voluntary. Mm-hmm. And so that lets people think that there was some relationship you had with her, and that somehow she felt upset over something and decided to spill the beans and hurt you because she was hurt emotionally somehow.
Right.
And did you have any kind of relationship at all?
Absolutely not.
Was she your client, so to speak?
In the juvenile detention center, they are assigned to, there's two sides, and there's 20 chairs on each side, and there was another male that worked in there. We each worked on a side with 8 to 10 female probation
But she was
officers.
assigned to you for a while? Is that how it works?
She was assigned to the unit as a whole, so not specifically me. This, they do when they're out in the field, probation officer,
Sure.
but this was more of a correctional type, setting. And so what I found out over the years is that regardless of the sex of the child, is that whenever somebody's doing something wrong and you punish them, they're upset.
Well, she was 16.
Right.
And what was she in for?
I don't know exactly. There was quite a few charges. This was what we
She's
call.
still in.
As far as I know, she has been released from prison.
Okay.
She was incarcerated in our local state prison for quite a few years. And so that's public record. As far as I know and what I'm being told, it's been about a month and a half and she is out of prison, but she has been there ever since 2009 or 2010 or something of the gist of that.
I think the basic question people want to know from you is this. From what you said, she had no case.
Right.
Why did you plead guilty? Why didn't you fight it and go to trial? That's the fundamental question everyone asks.
Right. And everywhere I go, people, it's really the question that they ask. And you understand to a certain degree of the legal process and what it entails.
I would never plead guilty to this ever in my life. I would take it to trial, and I would personally. I would never, ever plead to this.
Right. What people need to understand is unless you walked in my shoes or somebody who has been in this process.
I want you to explain what you were thinking after 5 years. What was your thought process?
After 5 years, what was soon going to possibly be 6 or even 7 years, or it could even be 8 years, right? Nobody has that number. All I know is after 5 years, we weren't there yet. So there was still some more time that needed to, be calculated.
Was it costing you money? Was it dragging?
No, I had a private conflict attorney, that was assigned to me. So
it's an attorney paid for by the state.
Correct. Yeah.
So why didn't the CO union or why didn't the law enforcement unit that you're attached to pay for your legal counsel? What happened there?
I'm not really sure with that. This is over 6 years ago. I was a part of NAPSA, which is the largest law enforcement
So aren't you entitled to
agency.
legal representation?
There was some representation at the in reference, to my job type stuff. As far as the outside, those things were brought up, and I think that might have been because I was a newer member.
How long were you in the job at that point?
I don't remember to be honest with you.
A year, 2 years?
Possibly, yeah. What happened was...
Were you on probation?
This was, no, at the time we had switched unions. We were our own entity, and then we switched over to NAPSO.
Usually you're like on probation the first year, right? So were
Right.
you within that probation, or were you?
I was past probation as far as an employee, but there was circumstances
So you had
with
rights.
going over to a new union.
As a CO, you had rights.
Correct.
And so if you had won the case and gone to trial, you would have been entitled to all the back pay for those years, wouldn't you?
You know,
You could have sued, you could have got damages.
Right. Those were all questions that we spoke about 6 years ago, right? There was a lot of those questions, the what ifs, and there was 10 different scenarios that we laid out, and all of them had a different twist to it. If we did this and we did that and we did that, and so I don't remember exactly what they all entailed. But to answer your question, to have this dark cloud constantly over your head every single day, and this wasn't just about me, this is about my family. I have some people who say, well, regardless of my family, I'm going to keep this going. Well, what kind of family person are you? Okay, I have a 20-year-old son who knows his father, knows his integrity. I have a lot of people who've known me over the years. I wouldn't be where I'm at today if any of that stuff were true. Anybody who is charged with the severity of it back at that time would not be walking the streets. They would not be giving a final disposition as I was. So I want everybody to understand that everything happens for a reason. And I tell people I would not be here today if that incident didn't happen. It changed my life forever. And because of that, I'm helping other people who don't have a voice. How many people are in prison for being falsely accused or take plea deals because they're scared of spending the rest of their life in jail? There's a lot of those.
Is that what you did?
What's that?
Is that what you did? Did you take a plea because you were afraid of serving time?
No, it really didn't come down to that. There was no case. It was a matter of the things that I'm trying to do and I'm trying to accomplish and move on with my life. There comes a certain point where I can't continue on unless this is figured out in some way or another. So I did what any reasonable person would do in a situation like this. We all know that in a jury trial, nobody can control that. That is also another situation. So was there a part of this that played in this to know that I could have been one of those that are stuck in prison for the rest of my life? Of course. That's a reasonable person would think that. Sure. But that's not necessarily the reason why I did what I did. My family, my close friends, my former coworkers, my professional relationships, those were all people that supported me over the years. And at some point, it's mentally and physically takes a toll on you. And so I wanted to move on, past it, knowing that I would have to answer to it. And as we go along, the truth will prevail. Again, after the primary, there's going to be a media release and a public statement in reference to that. We'll go more into the greater detail of it.
You've been running since, March of this year,
March, yes.
Right? That's when you first signed up. I haven't seen any of the female CEOs come forward and speak out on your behalf. What's going on? I haven't seen a lot of people come out that you worked with from this episode and say, hey, you know what? I know the guy. What's going on there? Why? Because a lot of people are asking about that.
Right. Well, they did 6 years ago, and so
where are they today? I mean, that's the question.
Well, they're still around, and again, when we make our media release and we do our interview, that could possibly be a part of it.
Well, you may not win the primary at this point because you have a new primary going forward, and you never know. 4 votes. Right. It's pretty close.
Yeah,
right?
No, we're going to win.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, we're going to win by 4,000. Yeah. No, I understand, and so what I want, the part of this process is that this is the early part of this, what is eventually all going to make sense later. It's one of those things that after we do a interview and immediate release later on after the primary, that's step one of many steps that are going to come forward with this thing.
And there was obviously one other issue where you had a girlfriend that had charged you with domestic violence with strangulation, and that went to trial.
Correct.
And you were found not guilty.
I was found not guilty. Yeah.
And just talk briefly about what happened with that and her.
That was another false accusation.
And that was right after this situation.
It was, yeah. So now we have, back to back, and again, I was found not guilty. This was a fabricated story that was made up, and my witness testified during my trial, and that was a part of me.
So you had a
being found
jury
not guilty.
trial.
Jury trial,
And
correct.
you won.
And I won.
So, what should people take away from the picture that you're trying to present of obviously your story and multiple issues? What should they take away from that?
What I want people to understand is that I had every opportunity to seal my record
Why didn't you?
because I want to be transparent about it. There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide about this. If I would have sealed my record and it would have came about right through the Fairness Act and all that kind of stuff, then it really looks even bad. So I decided not to seal my record, to keep it open for view, in which it has. And then I want people everybody has a chance to look at the minutes and so forth, but that's part of my transparency part. That's part of me saying, hey, I have nothing to hide. I'm being upfront about it. I'm talking about it more and more as we go along. I can only make so many phone calls and texts throughout the day, right? I got to work too. So I want people to understand that, how do we treat those that are falsely accused? Do we constantly hold a burden over their head for the rest of their life? Are they not allowed to move on and still represent their community or take care of their family or have a regular job? Does it take for somebody to be falsely accused and be incarcerated for years for somebody to finally get the message? So I want people to understand that, look at my background, look at everything that I've done, look at all those people that support me, look at my education. I got a master's in public administration from UNLV. I have a master's in justice management from UNR, emphasis in family and juvenile law. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from UNLV. I have an associate's in mental health from CSN. I'm locally educated. I've been in the local workforce. I've been in public service locally. I help people find jobs locally. I'm a vet. I help my veterans locally. Everything, my education is fairly recent. The last 4 years, I graduated with my master's, and I'm going to pursue a doctorate in public policy. So I want people to understand that, you have to look at the overall picture of this thing and not just one side of it. And so I appreciate everybody who keeps supporting us, who keeps donating to our campaign. And we're doing great. Everything is, we're on track to not only win this primary, but we're going to win in November.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Rob.
Really
Appreciate it.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot. So Aaron Manfredi, public administrative candidate, Republican. You can get your ballots in the mail right now, and you turn them in by, what's the date turn them in by?
By 7 p.m. July 17th.
There you go. And what's your website again? Let's give it a website.
Manfredi2018.com.
Great. Thanks a lot. Again, this is Rob Lauer for Battlefield, Nevada.